Meadowlands Stadium, the 75th minute of a stifling summer afternoon. A left foot whips the heavy leather ball just inside the near post, bending perfectly past a frozen goalkeeper. 90,000 people go completely silent under the New Jersey sky. Bulgaria, a nation that had never won a single World Cup game before this tournament began, was suddenly staring down the mighty reigning world champions. This was the sound of a storm arriving on American soil, led by a man who refused to bow to anyone. To understand why this moment still echoes, you have to look at the sheer impossibility of the journey. A nation with absolutely no history of World Cup success traveled across the Atlantic and dismantled the established hierarchy of global football. They reached a spectacular semifinal. Their talisman, Hristo Stoichkov, scored 6 times and claimed the Golden Boot. But he did not just pad his statistics in one easy match. He scored in 5 consecutive games against some of the best teams on earth, meaning the danger never once left the pitch. All summer long, a fearless Bulgaria bent the biggest tournament in the world to their will. The making of this storm actually began in Catalonia. Stoichkov arrived in America at the absolute peak of his powers, sharpened by the genius of Johan Cruyff at Barcelona. Cruyff's legendary dream team was a finishing school for footballing intelligence. They taught relentless pressure, immaculate passing angles, and moving the ball with terrifying speed in your mind before it even reached your feet. Surrounded by tactical purists, Stoichkov learned to attack empty space like it was a profound habit. He made the left side of the pitch his personal runway, combining technical grace with a raw, undeniable aggression. At Barcelona, where he would go on to score over 150 goals, Stoichkov was the fire that balanced the ice. The temper was always there undeniably. He was famously combative, constantly walking the edge of discipline. But in the biggest moments, that burning anger narrowed into a laser focus. The very edge that drew yellow cards also drew match-winning goals. Cruyff understood that you do not put out a fire if you want to forge steel. When the stage grew massive, Stoichkov grew with it, demanding the ball when others hid. But before the American dream could unfold, there was a bitter night in Paris that lit the fuse for everything. November 1993, the legendary Parc des Princes. France possessed a golden squad and needed only a single draw to book their ticket to the World Cup. Bulgaria arrived as massive underdogs, clinging to fading hopes as the clock ticked past 89 minutes. The French crowd was ready to celebrate. But a sudden turnover in midfield changed the destiny of 2 nations in a heartbeat. Bulgaria broke forward with desperate speed. The ball found Emil Kostadinov, who charged into the right side of the penalty area and rifled an unstoppable strike off the underside of the crossbar. The stadium froze in absolute disbelief. France was eliminated. Bulgaria was going to the World Cup. Stoichkov was already a massive star in Spain, but now he was the face of the ultimate qualification upset back home. That last-second triumph forged an unbreakable belief in the squad. They had survived the impossible, so they feared absolutely nothing. Then came the reality check of their very first day in America. It was an absolute nightmare. The group stage opener pitted them against a vibrant Nigeria in the suffocating heat of the Cotton Bowl. Instead of riding their momentum, Bulgaria was humbled. Nigeria ran fast, they ran brave, and they punished every single mistake. A brutal 3-0 defeat left the Bulgarians looking utterly lost. The ghosts of their winless World Cup history seemed ready to haunt them once again in front of a global audience. From that devastating low, everything had to change immediately. The belief, the tactical shape, and the mood in the dressing room were all fractured. This is where coach Dimitar Penev showed his true genius. He did not shout, he did not break them down further. He remained incredibly calm, managing a famously fiery group of individual personalities with a light touch. He set crystal clear jobs for every man. He kept the atmosphere relaxed, trusting their legs and their timing to find the rhythm they had lost in the Texas heat. Penev's tactical blueprint was brilliant in its simplicity and lethal in its execution. Out of possession, Bulgaria settled into a sturdy, traditional 4-4-2 formation. They built 2 narrow banks of players, remaining compact and incredibly stubborn. They invited teams forward, letting the opposition have the ball in harmless areas while making the middle of the pitch feel impossibly crowded. They absorbed pressure not with panic, but with the quiet patience of a trap waiting to be sprung. The moment they won the ball back, the shape shifted in a single breath. The spring-loaded counterattack was breathtaking. One central defender would step high into midfield. The wide players flew forward like sprinters leaving the blocks. In transition, they morphed into a 3-5-2 and sometimes even an ultra-aggressive 3-4-3. The counterattacks did not build slowly. They came like sudden snaps of thunder across the pitch, catching world-class defenses completely off guard. The cast of characters making this system work was entirely unforgettable. At the back was Trifon Ivanov, a lion of a defender with a fierce presence and a fearless heart, stepping into midfield to break the lines. Ahead of him, Krasimir Balakov was the velvet playmaker, floating gracefully into pockets of space. Yordan Lechkov ghosted late into the penalty area with perfect timing. And waiting at the cutting edge of it all was Stoichkov. He was the apex predator, constantly hanging on the shoulder of the last defender. The Great Reset finally came in Chicago against Greece. Bulgaria exploded with a 4-0 victory. It was their first ever World Cup win, a monumental milestone that sounded like a heavy iron door swinging open. Stoichkov sparked the revival with 2 ruthless goals, including a blistering run into his favored left channel that left the defense grasping at shadows. The swagger was instantly back in every touch. A team covered in scars had found its rhythm, and the roaring crowd rose right alongside them. The momentum carried them back to Dallas to face Argentina. Even with Diego Maradona suspended and Claudio Caniggia absent, the Argentine aura still felt massive. But Bulgaria simply did not care about reputations anymore. They held their defensive line steady under the sweltering sun, absorbing the pressure of the South American giants, and then they ran with devastating intent. They turned a daunting group stage match into a defining statement. A beautifully weighted through ball rolled perfectly into the left lane. Stoichkov was gone before the defender even turned his head. He outpaced a giant backline, drove into the penalty area, and slid a low, cold-blooded finish into the far corner. Bulgaria 2, Argentina 0. In just 4 days, they had gone from a disorganized squad of group stage survivors to undeniable statement makers, marching directly into the knockout rounds with absolute supreme confidence. The round of 16 brought them face-to-face with Mexico in a true test of their endurance. It was a brutal, grueling battle under the harsh afternoon sun. The match dragged into extra time, locked at 1 goal apiece. The legs of the Bulgarian players were incredibly heavy, drained by the immense travel and the searing temperatures. But their minds remained brilliantly clear as the referee blew the final whistle and signaled for a penalty shootout. In the ultimate crucible of the shootout, goalkeeper Borislav Mihailov stood 10 feet tall. He leaped and pushed away the low strikes, making the heroic saves his exhausted team desperately needed. Bulgaria calmly dispatched their kicks, winning the shootout 3-1. Stoichkov had scored again in regulation, keeping his incredible streak alive and leading from the front. The entire team had stared down exhaustion and simply refused to blink. That victory set up a legendary quarterfinal clash in New Jersey against Germany, the reigning world champions. For over an hour, it was a tense, grinding affair. Then disaster struck. A penalty was awarded to the Germans, and the legendary Lothar Matthäus buried it. Bulgaria was down 1-0 to the most resilient tournament team in history. Precious time was slipping away rapidly. They needed a spark of sheer individual brilliance to save their summer. The spark came in the 75th minute from that magical left foot. Standing over a free kick on the right side of the box, Stoichkov did not cross it. He curled a fast, low, bold strike that bent perfectly inside the near post. He brilliantly picked the side the German keeper did not expect, catching him leaning the wrong way. The Meadowlands erupted in a shockwave of noise. The unstoppable champions had been breached. Exactly 3 minutes later, the entire footballing world flipped upside down. A sweeping cross was delivered into the German penalty area. Yordan Lechkov flew through the air, his unmistakable bald crown shining under the stadium lights. He threw his entire body at the ball, driving a phenomenal diving header past the keeper. 2-1. In the space of just 4 chaotic minutes, a country that had never won a World Cup match before this summer had eliminated the mighty holders. The semifinal brought them to the legendary Rose Bowl for a duel that felt like a beautifully written picture book. It was Hristo Stoichkov against Italy's Roberto Baggio, 2 absolute artists of the game operating at the very peak of their creative powers. Italy raced into a 2-0 lead, driven by 2 moments of pure, heartbreaking genius from Baggio. It seemed the dream was finally over, but Bulgaria, true to their underdog nature, absolutely refused to go away quietly. Before halftime, a penalty was awarded to Bulgaria. Stoichkov stepped up and slammed it home with sheer fury, dragging his team back into the fight. For the entire second half, he chased every single loose ball. He harried the fabled Italian defense, constantly asking questions of their legendary resolve. The answer was no this time. Italy held on to win 2-1. But the Bulgarian storm never eased, raging relentlessly until the very last blast of the referee's whistle. Pause for just a second and pull up a chair by the fire. If this journey pulls you back to those golden summer nights of football, subscribe to Ink Pitch. We tell the stories of the legends, the tactics, and the unforgettable moments that made us all fall in love with the beautiful game. Every story is hand-drawn and deeply felt. Drop a like if you are enjoying this tale, and let's get back to the legacy of the great Bulgarian storm. Now, let us look at the numbers behind the thunder. Stoichkov finished the tournament with 6 goals, rightfully claiming the Golden Boot. He officially shared the award with Oleg Salenko of Russia, who also scored 6 times. But there is a massive distinction to be made in how those goals were earned. Salenko scored 5 of his goals in a single blowout group stage match. Stoichkov's 6 goals were spread across 5 completely different, high-stakes knockout and group stage battles. He scored a staggering 60% of Bulgaria's entire goal tally at the tournament, 6 out of 10, but his contribution felt so much larger than a simple percentage, because the looming threat of his left foot lived across the entire incredible run. He delivered a masterful free kick against the world champions. He buried high-pressure penalties against Mexico and Italy, and he produced cold, calculating finishes in open play when his country needed them the absolute most. After the blaze of the American summer faded, the individual honors rightfully poured in. In December of 1994, Hristo Stoichkov was awarded the Ballon d'Or, crowning him the undisputed greatest player in Europe. It was the perfect culmination of a spectacular year. Barcelona had ruled Spanish football with absolute authority, and in America, Stoichkov had taken the biggest sporting event on the planet and made it his own personal stage. Why does this story still crackle in our memory decades later? Because Bulgaria finished 4th, securing their only World Cup semifinal appearance in history, but they did it with a style that became legendary. They offered a breathtaking template for fearless, front-foot football that was absolutely alive in transition. They outran Argentina. They outfought Germany. Despite grueling travel schedules across massive time zones and suffocating heat, they kept sprinting like wild horses deep into mid-July. Hristo Stoichkov was the undisputed face of it all. He played like a sudden, electric, and completely unforgettable storm. Eventually the storm passed, but the air in world football felt entirely different afterward. That miraculous summer in America now sits permanently among the greatest folk tales of the World Cup. If this story reminded you why the game is so beautiful, make sure to subscribe to Ink Pitch. There are always more legends and more matches waiting by the fire. Until next time, keep the game close.